will we do? It will be about virtual reality, and it will be about how to design this virtual reality so that people learn from it. So it's not for gaming today, sorry. It's VR for learning. You can also learn by playing games. VR for learning.
Cái mục đích của chúng ta hôm nay đó là học cách làm sao để thiết kế một cái app để phục vụ cho việc học tập sử dụng VR.
Okay. That's why we will start with your definition about learning. Here I will show you some examples of VR, and we will question whether we learn. In a second step, we will look at a design cycle, and then we will do it. Step 1, we will do step 2, and then we will prepare your homework.
Structure, cấu trúc ngày hôm nay đầu tiên chúng ta sẽ phải định nghĩa lại với mỗi người đó là cái việc learning học là gì. Tiếp theo đó chúng ta sẽ học cái design cycle trong việc thiết kế chương trình học. Có cái step 1, step 2 để analysis, phân tích và khám phá và cũng thiết kế và xây dựng. Sau đó chúng ta sẽ làm việc nhóm, sau đó chúng ta sẽ có bài tập về nhà.
To keep you going, you get some chocolate.
Thầy giáo sư mua vài món quà để giúp các bạn có động lực, các thầy cô có động lực hơn.
It has been Easter in Belgium, and when it's Easter, we give Easter eggs to the children.
Các tay bị
Okay. So, this is a typical school in Belgium. You see, children, they're in a classroom, and they all have a laptop. All of them. And their work in school is supported with the laptop. Okay? When you're ill, you can stay home, and we have these special robots that you can follow the class. So you cannot say, I'm ill. No. Even when you're ill, you can get
Có thể
laptop.
trên hình đây là một lớp học cơ bản của Bỉ. Các học sinh đều có laptop riêng và nếu ốm thì sẽ có thiết bị để có thể học tại nhà.
So there is something special in this picture. All these children sit together in a classroom, but they learn individually. The learning is in each individual head. So it's never the class learning, it's a group of individuals learning. And that's what you have to remember for the whole session of today. Can you guarantee that every individual will learn with VR or with whatever material?
Có nhiều đặc biệt trong bức tranh này, mặc dù tất cả học sinh thì học chung một lớp nhưng họ học từ cá nhân, tức là từng cá nhân sẽ phải, các bạn phải đảm bảo để cho sinh viên học sinh của mình học được từng người một chứ không phải học trong một bộ nhóm.
For instance, even here, this is a group work. They work in a group on something about Egypt. It's the history of Egypt, so it's a history class. They work together, but even when they work together, each individual child has to learn.
Mặc dù là trong nhóm này họ đang học về môn học, mặc dù họ làm việc theo các học sinh làm việc theo nhóm, nhưng mỗi học sinh cũng tự phải học cho cá nhân mình.
What will we do today is we will change a little bit of the traditional classroom because we will look at a virtual reality environment where you learn.
Khác biệt so với cách học truyền thống là chúng ta sẽ ứng dụng thực tế ảo, nơi mà chúng ta sử dụng thực tế ảo để học.
So it's still learning, but in a simulated environment, and you're present in that simulated environment.
Chúng ta vẫn là học nhưng mà học trong một cái môi trường ảo nhưng mà vẫn là thực tế.
So what I want to stress is, it's exactly the same as in a traditional classroom. When you design VR, you have to think about how will I guarantee they learn.
Mặc dù ở thực tế ảo chúng ta phải đảm bảo làm sao là học sinh sinh viên mình vẫn được học giống như chúng ta học theo phương pháp trung thực.
Don't underestimate this question, because if you're not able to define what learning is, then you will be in trouble.
Không được đánh giá thấp câu hỏi này đúng không ạ? Mặc dù câu hỏi rất là dễ nhưng các thầy cô cần phải nắm được là dạy học là gì, learning học là gì.
Okay, so the last group here, I need to see. I see flowers. Okay, so you already got some ideas. Okay, please keep your watch here. I will try.
Các thầy cô lưu ý ạ.
I will try to pull together some ideas.
Thế bây giờ thầy sẽ đọc các cái ý kiến.
For instance, here you see getting new knowledge and skills. Now, getting.
Nhóm ở đây nó có một ý kiến đầu tiên đó là có được cái kiến thức mới và cải thiện cái kiến thức kỹ năng mới.
So, learning is that you say, okay, we have a student. Okay, that's a nice student, smiling. And this student gets information. Okay?
We hope that he understands.
The problem is, when I sit down in my classroom, the students gets information, but do they learn?
Vấn đề về ý đầu tiên đó là có thông tin, nhưng liệu chúng có học cái thông tin đấy không?
Okay, so they hear things, they see things, maybe they touch things, okay, maybe they will, okay, move around with this information, but do they learn? So sitting in a classroom and watching a teacher and listening, is that learning? Is that enough? No. It's not enough. So it's the first step. The second thing they write is new understanding. Now, the word understanding, so it means, they get information and in the brain, you know, there are two parts in the brain. There happens something called understand.
Ý thứ hai của nhóm là understanding là hiểu.
But what does that mean?
Hiểu là gì của anh? Định nghĩa đúng không ạ?
What does that mean, understand? How do you know a student understands? Yeah, but that's nice. You test as a teacher, but how will a student understand? How will you? We have to look at the student, not at the teacher.
Better think.
Làm thế nào? Chúng ta biết được sinh viên đang hiểu.
You say they have to think, but how will you be sure they think?
Làm thế nào chúng ta chắc chắn được là sinh viên đang
I hope you understand that a definition of learning has to be very concrete. If you simply say getting information, that's what happens in every classroom. They get information.
Ta cần phải hiểu được định nghĩa của
After
học.
10 minutes, they get
Rất
information.
là rõ ràng.
Yeah? That's not learning. Simply giving information to students is not a guarantee for learning. Asking them, do you understand? And all the students say what? Yes, sir. Do they understand?
Yes. They cannot
Understand. But the third thing is very interesting. The third thing that group writes down is learning means that you do something. Actions.
Thứ ba của nhóm
Can you please give
hoạt động,
me
action.
an example of an action? Can you give me an example of an action that shows they get the information, they understand the information, and they think about the information? How will I observe that they learn? Give me an action. Here, this group.
Nhóm này action đấy là gì?
Give
Có
me
một
an
cái
action.
hoạt động để giúp chúng ta
Reading books.
What?
Reading book.
Reading.
Yeah.
Okay. So the action is they get information by reading. But do they
Do
learn?
exercise.
But do they learn?
Do exercise.
Do exercise. He's listening at home.
Homework. Or
Yes,
in
but
the class. Or
it's so general. Homework can be 1 million different
cụ thể
things.
hơn, cái hành động cụ thể, hoạt động cụ thể.
Don't learn.
Give me a very nice example of yes, they do something, and now I'm sure they understand. They get the
Các thầy có
information.
nghĩa một ví dụ, một hoạt động nào đó mà
The
chúng ta
homework-
nhìn vào đấy, chúng ta biết là học sinh đã
Homework
hiểu
is
bài.
something you give to students, but do they learn? No. They go to the internet, they download the answer, and they give back the answer to you. Or they call their friend, and they take the answer of the friend, and they give it to you.
Bài
That's
thi
no
không
learning.
phải là một câu trả lời.
Answer the question.
Answer the question.
Answer a question. Okay,
Quiz,
so
quiz. Do quiz.
yes, but so it means that something happens, and with their eyes and their mouth and their ears and their hands and maybe their feet, they do something. But can you give me an example? The word answering a question is again, there are 1 million kinds of answers to questions.
That's what you did now. What did you have? Give them the small task.
Yes.
Reflect the basic.
So, for instance, I make a drawing.
Ví dụ, đây là một ví dụ để xem mọi người có hiểu không? Thầy đã vẽ một hình lên.
Making this drawing is an action.
Vậy vẽ hình chính là một action, một hành động
So,
để giúp.
for instance, I can ask my student to read a text and make a summary or develop a mind map. Hey, there I can see that it happens. So the action, you as a teacher, you can see, hey, they make a mind map. Okay.
Ví dụ đây là một bản
They
tư duy,
make
sau khi
summary.
mình yêu cầu học sinh học đọc,
They
thì
give
yêu cầu
me
tóm tắt lại bằng bản tư duy.
key
Lúc đấy
words.
chúng ta sẽ hiểu được là sinh viên đó đã hiểu bài.
So, can I see the answers there? Define learning.
Nhóm kia anh mở rộng.
Okay. So there you see, these are the very general words that you find in Bloom's taxonomy. Knowledge. But is knowledge learning? I have books full of knowledge. But when I give you the book, will you learn?
Knowledge
It
kiến
depends
thức là
on
một
what
từ
you-
rất là chung chung, và khi chúng ta có rất nhiều thứ thì chúng ta có được kiến thức,
Imagine.
nhưng mà chúng ta có học được hay không?
Okay, so I give to my students, I give them a book.
Ví dụ cho sinh
For
viên
instance, a
sách,
book about C++.
sách
Okay.
về
You all love C++. Okay.
một lập trình
Got it.
C cộng.
Well, how will you know that they get the information, that they understand, that they think? How will you do it? Well, they have to do something. Can you give me examples of actions with C++?
Và nên nếu chúng ta đưa cho sinh viên một quyển sách về lập trình C cộng thì làm thế nào chúng ta biết được là sinh viên nó hiểu về cái ngôn ngữ lập trình đó?
Write a program.
Write a program.
Write a program. Okay? So you could say they can write a program. They can debug a program. They can make a program more efficient, shorter. Yes? So these are real actions. So when you're in a classroom and you see your students looking at you, is that learning? And mostly what happens is after a while they look like this.
Sinh viên ngồi trên lớp.
Hello, are you still there? Are you there? Okay.
Nó có thể biết rằng là sinh viên
The
có đang
moment
học
they
hay không.
write, they solve, they send you something, they make a drawing, they make structure, they make a decision together.
Ta phải
So,
những
remember-
hành động, những hoạt động trong lớp để có thể biết được là sinh viên đang hiểu được bài.
Right and right.
I even have colors now. The focus of today is we will look at virtual reality and we hope they learn. But you will only be sure they learn when you make them do something.
Nó phải thiết kế những cái chương trình thực tế ảo để đảm bảo rằng là sinh viên có thực hiện các hành động và hiểu được bài, học được bài.
See, where am I? So, that was my first question, that was learn. The whole day I will ask the same question. Are you sure they learn?
Cả ngày nay thầy sẽ hỏi một câu là bạn có chắc là
And
sinh
the only
viên đã
way-
học được bài không?
And the only way to convince me is, yes, I'm sure because they are doing this, doing that.
Nhiệm vụ các bạn là đảm bảo rằng
If you're not able to do that,
they
while they are watching, okay, then there's no guarantee about learning. So I visited hundreds of universities. And most of the universities I visit, they bring me to a classroom and say, look, a very nice classroom, screens, and so on. And the students, they sit and they watch. I say, a very innovative classroom.
Rất nhiều những cái trường mà thầy đến thăm thì
Absolutely no
sinh
guarantee.
viên gần như chỉ có ngồi và nghe và không làm gì cả.
This classroom is annoying because all the time I ask you to do this. Give me an answer. And you don't like it.
Lớp này một ví dụ ạ.
I know that you don't like it. You want to continue to do your work. You want to check your mail. You want to make the shopping list for tonight.
Bạn đang làm việc riêng ở thầy phát hiện một số bạn đang
Students
việc
is
riêng.
the same. Learning is not fun. Learning is hard because you have to work. You have to do actions. So today we will define all the time actions for students.
Ngày hôm nay chúng ta sẽ tìm hiểu cái action, cái hoạt động như thế nào giúp học sinh, sinh viên có thể hiểu được vấn đề của chúng ta.
So, when you look at virtual reality and you read the literature, this is a very nice example. It's a very recent article in the journal Electronics 23 and gives you an overview of 10, 20, 30 theories about learning. They say if we want people to learn in VR, then we need a good theory. Your teachers, you need your own theory about learning.
Chúng ta cần phải phát triển cái lý thuyết để học.
So
Chúng
if
ta
you
phải
read,
trên, lý thuyết như vậy.
so when you read this article, by the way, this article you can download for free. Okay.
Đây là
Then you will see, for instance, here, models and approaches towards learning. And here you see the most, sorry, I always touch.
rất nhiều những cái lý thuyết khác nhau, lý thuyết là mô hình khác nhau để giúp chúng ta có thể
It's the most popular theories to explain learning.
trong số những cái lý thuyết rất là thông dụng.
And very often, when I ask teachers, can you explain me your theory about learning?
Và phần lớn giáo viên
You can explain, you can ask them C++.
cái lý thuyết của
They
mình.
can explain everything about C++, but they cannot explain me about learning.
Và giáo viên có thể giải thích về cái môn mình dạy nhưng không thể hiểu, không giải thích được cái
Because when you
lý
teach
thuyết dạy học.
students and you have no clear idea of what you expect as an outcome, then there is no guarantee. That's why the quality of higher education is not good. All the evaluations are very clear. Higher education is a lot of loss of time.
Lý do vì sao chúng ta cần clear idea về cái lý thuyết dạy học của chúng ta.
Students sit, listen, and you work. You are working, but the students are not working. So please stop teaching. Make them work.
Ta phải không dạy học nữa mà phải làm.
Please stop teaching.
Đúng dạy.
I will make you work the whole day, because then I'm sure that something will happen here. Otherwise, oh, very funny, we got chocolates. That you will remember of today.
Cả ngày hôm nay tôi sẽ khiến các bạn phải thực sự phải làm việc, và tôi sẽ thông qua việc đó đảm bảo rằng là các bạn đã học được điều gì đó.
So I will give you now 3 examples of virtual reality. And my question will be all the time, can you explain to me if students or children learn from this? Are you ready?
Bây giờ chúng ta sẽ tiếp cận với 3 ví dụ về cái tiềm năng về học để
You
chúng
go
ta.
to the next. Okay, can I see your answers?
Tùy người ta chưa
Cái dây nào, cái dây này nó này xong rồi phải xem
dây đấy mang lên cho thầy chứng kiến
cái dây này có dễ phải phải đi dây đấy mà hình của
Okay, example number 1. First example, I got a group and they said it has the following impact. It makes people excited. Okay? What group was that? What group had excitement?
Excitement.
Okay, excitement. Okay, I put the word excitement here. I had another group who said people will be motivated. What group was that?
Motivation.
Here, motivation.
Hai ý đầu tiên là về sự hào hứng, như hai là cái động lực.
Motivation. The group at the end, what did you have again?
Nhóm cuối có ý gì ạ? Ngoài hai ý excitement và motivation.
We can feel in the scene, the sightseeing about.
Yeah, excitement, and then what else?
We can sing and hearing about the place. If
See
we
and
are
hear.
wearing
You can
that
see, you can see
sing and
and
hear.
hear.
Tức là nào thì
About.
giờ cuốn nha.
Okay, so we already have this. What do we have here?
Nổi qua mày đây này.
Okay, you're interested in immersion. You're immersed in the setting. Well, I will not say this is correct or wrong.
Đấy chứ, không nói đây đúng hay sai đâu. Đây chỉ là liệt kê các nhóm.
When you're excited in the classroom, it will help you to learn. But is it learning?
Hào hứng sẽ giúp chúng ta muốn học không hiểu đấy gọi là học.
So all these things, they are very important, but they are conditions for learning. It's nice that you're excited. It will help you to learn, but do you learn? The learning is something else. You're more excited, you're more motivated to do something. But what did the people do in this virtual reality? Indeed, they see, they hear, but when you look at the learning part of it, when are you sure that hearing and seeing equals learning? When? When?
Chúng ta nhìn chúng ta xem nó làm thế nào, khi nào thì cái việc xem và nhìn hình ảnh là sẽ giúp chúng ta học.
How could we change this nice and expensive VR application to be sure that they learn?
Chúng ta câu hỏi làm thế nào chúng ta chắc chắn rằng là sinh viên mình học được.
Please, can you give me an example of an action?
Ta
Please
cần một
answer.
hành động, còn những cái thông tin kia nó chỉ là condition, là điều kiện nữa.
What could you ask people to do when they see and hear this? VR. Okay.
How to describe?
Okay, so you could ask him. Okay, let's simply do this. Why not? Okay, so I'm kneeling in front of a computer. Okay, so I could say I go here, and I will add a button. Okay, and in that button, I can say you can describe something. Right. Or you could have. Oh yeah, now it's in a very nice language. Okay. So décrire, describe. So, okay. Describe. Another very funny thing you could do is build your. Sorry, that's because I kneel. Build your own tour. So you could ask people, click on this, and then you can select from the large amount of pictures. You can say, make your own reference tour. Okay? You could also ask them, okay, look for addresses. And then you can say, oh, yes, I want to go there. And then you can click there, and then you find the address. So, virtual reality is not simply like in the classroom, sitting and listening. Nice. And then you hear this nice romantic music. And the pictures come and the pictures go. And at the end, that was nice. And what did you see? Most people will not remember. You will only remember things when what you see and hear, when something happens here. And only something happens when people have to do something. So remember today, when we develop VR, it's not simply by showing a picture of an engine or showing a picture of a building. You will have to ask people to do something, to process information, to combine, to organize, to select, to structure. I'm talking too much?
Yes, fine. Tóm lại thì trong buổi hôm nay chúng ta phải thiết kế được một cái thực tế ảo sao cho sinh viên có thể thực hiện các hành động, chứ không phải là chỉ đưa dẫn hình ảnh để sinh viên tận hưởng, tăng sự hào hứng, tăng sự hứng thú, mà phải có một cái action nào đó giúp cho sinh viên có thể process, sử dụng não bộ để suy nghĩ, để thực hiện, để làm việc.
Next example. This is again a classroom in Belgium. What you see is a primary school. A primary school where children learn to cycle.
Đây là ví dụ về một lớp học tiểu học ở trường Bỉ đang học về lái xe đạp.
There's a very different traffic system in Belgium compared to Vietnam. Okay? You have thousands of bikes, motorbikes. We don't have that many motorbikes, we have bikes. And the bikes are together with cars on the road. The difference with Vietnam is our cars drive fast. So when you send a child on the road with a bike, mothers and fathers are afraid. Yes, because it's dangerous.
Bởi vì đạp xe rất là nguy hiểm, thì ô tô phải phóng rất nhanh, nên là việc trẻ em mà đạp xe thì sẽ phải hướng dẫn và dạy trong trường.
So in fact, one of the researchers in our department, he was responsible for designing a VR environment in which children learn to cycle in a virtual city.
Đồng nghiệp của thầy đã thiết kế những cái trò chơi cái chương trình này.
When you look on your own presentation, you will see they all have glasses. And in their hands, they have a steering wheel of a bike. Okay? They can brake, they can turn, okay? They can put out their hand to go right or to left. They can ring the bell, ring, ding, ding, ding. Okay, when it's dangerous. They understand. Okay. Now, let's have a look at this simulation. Okay. So you start. Okay. So this is now a video made of what children see. So they make a selection whether they learn to drive or okay, this boy wants to drive. Okay. They can choose their bike. They can choose helmets. Okay, he chooses the helmets, and then he wants to practice. And then he chooses yes. Okay, and they have a button here, and if they want to start, they click on the button. Okay, and then they start driving. See, you have to use your bell when you want to alarm other people on the road that you're coming. There's also sound, but you don't hear it that well. So this boy is now practicing. And now he will overtake a car. So in our system, you have to put out your right hand when you move to the left.
Trong hệ thống này thì khi muốn rẽ trái thì sinh viên học sinh phải giơ tay ra xin lỗi.
Now this boy, he wants to be on the real roads. He goes to the real road here. This is the lane for bikes, and this is the 2 lanes for the cars. And that's our bike, and you clearly see he's using the bell to signal this person, I'm coming to overtake you. Okay? So all the time, the VR environment gives you a problem situation. And if you make the wrong decision, then okay. And here you get feedback why you crashed. So, and then you can restart. Okay, he's ringing the bell to overtake the cyclist. He's also watching left, whether everything is safe. He's overtaking. Then he will continue. And everything can happen. There can be a car from the right or a car from the left or a bike coming to you. And each time you have to make decisions.
Chương trình lập trình tất cả những cái tình huống có thể xảy ra trên đường và sinh viên học sinh sẽ phải giải quyết tình huống đó.
You see? Okay. There were pedestrians on the roads. They went on the lane for bikes. You have the signal. And you got feedback with a green arrow. This is a second example. Okay, level and you still live. Okay, you're alive and you can go to the next level. The question now for you is, what can you learn here in this VR application? And does it have a large impact, yes or no, and why? Please, make your notes.
Các nhóm trả lời 2 câu hỏi. Nhất đó là cái chúng ta học được gì từ cái bài học lái xe.
Next slide. Yes, next slide.
Nó lớn hay nhỏ là sao? Chúng ta làm những câu hỏi như thế.
So you cannot connect to the screen?
There's no cable.
Oh, there's no cable.
The cable.
The next time I'll do okay, here also you are connected. I hope you see this is already a very different VR example. Come on, please. What are the ideas? Can you bring together? She has to type some.
Các nhóm lưu ý cái bài, cái ví dụ số 2 nó khác rất khác so với ví dụ số 1. Chúng ta sẽ có những cái cụ thể hơn.
Không, skill cái phản xạ là khác biệt. Skill là nó cái kỹ năng bài nói. Mà không phải là cái phản xạ đâu. Cái phản xạ.
can you learn in it's let's see the right slide.
Yeah. Nhầm slide. It's okay. You just get information.
Okay, what can you learn in this VR application?
Easy to approach with reality.
Yeah, but what can you learn? So what do children learn? So the real thing, what do they really learn?
Sinh học gì sau khi thực hiện tham gia cái VR?
Okay. Okay, so let's write down. So the second example, example 2. Okay, so they interpret a situation. Okay, what was the second one? We had another lady. Oh, control. You control the steering wheel, you follow the handle, steering wheel or the handle. Okay, other group at the back, what can you learn?
Nhóm dưới có ý kiến.
We can learning about observation of the
Yes. What you say is now how you learn, but what can you learn through observation? What?
Observation thì là cái mình cách mình học, sau này là sẽ quan sát mình học được gì.
I can learn about the rule.
Okay, so you learn, so in fact you apply the rule.
Ta ứng dụng cái luật lệ.
Apply the rule, for instance, that you have to ring the bell. Okay, that you have to ring the bell the moment you overtake something. You apply a rule. So you see, I change all the time your wording, your phrasing, to make it very concrete. Observation that's everything. Okay, it's like listening, it's like reading. We want really to narrow down very specific. Here, what do you learn? Okay, so it's a very nice example here. You can predict a consequence. So I hope that you see that in this VR application, it's not simply sitting down and listening. No, it's very different because you have to take actions.
Trong cái ví dụ số 2 này, học sinh thực tế đã phải làm.
This is the key task in designing VR.
Cái nhiệm vụ quan trọng trong việc thiết kế những cái thực tế ảo.
It's not simply giving a nice picture. No, it's looking for ways that the user, the learner, the student, that he or she is doing something. Doing that will result in, for instance, doing is predict a consequence, interpret a situation, control a tool, apply a rule. So the special thing about actions is it's a verb and it's a subject or an object about something. So all the time in VR we think about what can people do with a certain tool, object, situation, context. Okay.
Chúng ta phải lưu ý rằng chúng ta trong sử dụng thực tế ảo chúng ta phải thiết kế sao cho sinh viên thực tế làm được một cái gì đó, có thể sử dụng những cái công cụ khác nhau. Ví dụ như trong trường hợp này chúng ta học sinh có thể biết được cách tiên đoán là tình huống tiếp theo, rồi đọc tình huống, rồi lái xe vân.
Before the break, the third example, and after the break, we will change the workshop that you will start working on your own example. Okay, now I have been working.
Okay.
Okay.
Tiếp theo sẽ là ví dụ số 3. sau đó chúng ta sẽ mỗi nhóm sẽ chia nhau ra và làm ví dụ cho riêng mình.
This is a Chinese museum in Sichuan province, and in Sichuan in 1980 they discovered an extremely old civilization nobody knew about. Nobody.
Theo là bảo tàng Trung Quốc rất là cổ, gần như văn minh mà chưa ai biết được.
It's a beautiful museum, but when you go with children to the museum, it's seeing, watching. And the first, and the third thing, and then I want to go to the toilet, or I want an ice cream. Museum is seeing, and maybe listening, but it's not doing something. That's why it's so difficult for children to go to a museum.
Bảo tàng là một nơi chúng ta đến để xem, để nghe, nhưng chúng ta không làm việc gì đó ở bảo tàng.
So, what did they do? This museum, they developed an online exhibition, and they developed an AR environment that you can visit the museum with your phone, and every object becomes alive. And you can choose and you can manipulate. Let's look.
Ta sẽ nhìn được bên bảo tàng này phát triển cái hệ thống tăng cường thực tế, chúng ta có thể tương tác được với những đồ vật ở trên trưng bày điện thoại.
So they get the tool, they get special glasses, okay? And then all of a sudden, okay, you see different things. You get extra information, okay? You get supporting information, you can manipulate, you can turn. You see living things entering.
Chúng ta tương tác với tất cả những cái vật trưng bày trong bảo tàng.
One of the most fascinating parts of the exhibition.
I visited this one.
Okay. Third example. What can you learn in this museum?
Vậy vẫn câu hỏi đó, chúng ta học được
And
gì?
why do you have an impact? So again, what do you learn? And why has it an impact?
Nó học gì lần này thì các thầy cô lưu ý sử dụng những động từ cho nó cụ thể,
Take some
chung
notes.
chung như là listening, nghe hay nhìn.
Okay, you know the drill now? Okay. 2 minutes.
Cố gắng càng cụ thể hóa, càng cụ thể một tốt.
But you're really not used to sit together and to talk together. No?
Thầy muốn các thầy cô là làm việc cùng nhau, nói chuyện cùng nhau, trao đổi cùng nhau.
I'm sure in the coffee shop it's different. Next
Qua
time do the workshop and talk.
anh ngồi đấy được.
Okay.
Nhiều góc độ ở đấy nó là sự trực quan.
So what can you learn and why do you think it has an impact?
Đa chiều lịch sử.
By the way, playing a game can be, it's something you do, but what do you learn from the game?
Ta có thể làm rõ, phải xác định rõ là mình học, mình làm được gì, mình học được gì từ cái công nghệ, cái ví dụ thứ ba, AI, cái tăng cường.
Okay, that's a nice one.
Vì là đúng không? Ý em là phân tích nó có cái hiểu được không thể đến khi bật về
What we learn in this museum because of the AR and the VR. What do you learn? For instance, you see, okay, objects, and now you can see the objects in the setting, or you see someone using it, or you can hear it. Okay, but what do you learn from this?
cái tác phẩm nó như
Because
nào
it's just a game.
gì thì nó tập tính về màu sắc vân vân.
Okay, there we go. Table number 1. What can you learn from? Okay.
We think that based on the range, we can find all these.
Okay, so here you see again, find the origin of an object. You see this again, you see an action, and you see an object or a subject related to the action. Thank you, table 1. Table 2.
Em nghĩ em có thể cảm nhận
You can see the biology from the born, the animal, things like that.
Okay, so you get some, okay, you collect, okay, biological info from skeleton of the deer, of that animal. Okay, again, verb and object subject. Next table.
We can see on the side of the object.
Okay, so that's, you see, you, in fact, you collect a complete perspective of an object. That's a very important thing. Mostly we see only the front of an object. Okay? But normally when you manipulate it, then you see, hey, it has a dimensional structure. In a museum, normally you're not allowed to manipulate things. Okay? But with these two you can manipulate, and in that way you get a better understanding. Let me start. What is this? It's a bottle. Now, it's a bottle. Okay? I showed this bottle to a 78-year-old lady. Okay? And I asked her, what is this? And she doesn't know. Because she has Alzheimer's disease. You know what Alzheimer's is?
Thầy đưa chai nước này cho bệnh nhân Alzheimer và không biết được đây là gì.
You lose your memory. Okay? So what I do is I cover the bottle and I ask the lady, sorry, now you're a lady, yeah, it's a lady, and ask her, go there and feel what is there. And I ask her, what is there? A bottle. Why? Because in our brain, we have pictures of a bottle, we have sound of a bottle, but especially we have the feeling, the touch of a bottle. So next to seeing, hearing, touching is very important information to process it in our brain. So the moment we allow something in a museum to touch something, we get a much better understanding of the full picture. Yeah? So virtual reality is very important here. It allows you to manipulate things.
Thì thực tế tăng cường AI giúp chúng ta có thể chạm được vào hiện vật, giúp chúng ta có thể vì chúng ta sẽ thông tin đồ vật thông qua nhìn, nghe và chạm, thì ở đây nó sẽ thêm một cái chức năng nữa là giúp ta chạm vào đồ vật.
And last group, number 4, what can you learn?
Sẽ không tin touching.
And hear the sound of birds.
Sorry?
Hear the sound of birds.
You hear the sounds, but what do you learn? So again, it's hearing the sound is getting information. You're bringing information to your brain, and here you do something. That's what you learn. Okay?
Maybe they understand that the operational or the function of the artifact.
The thing is, it's the manipulation of something. It's part of what you do, but especially what you do has to link to what Correlation to what?
Still
Okay.
flex, still
Cái
flex.
hành động
Yeah.
sẽ cần phải nối với cả kết nối với cái objective, cái mục tiêu của chúng ta. Ví dụ trên bạn là có find the origin of object.
So simply pointing at something on the screen is not enough. It's pointing, selecting, reporting, pointing, putting.
Đơn giản chỉ có chỉ
Okay.
vào không được,
Yeah.
phải
So
chỉ vào
it's
có
important,
và
the sound is important, but you can do something. For instance, I love musical instruments. There is a very nice museum in Brussels with 20,000 instruments. You can walk in the museum and you can collect sounds. So you can collect instruments, but at the same time you can collect the sounds so that you have also not only the look of the instrument, but also the sound of the instrument. Then you have more complete processing of the information.
ví dụ về một bảo tàng âm nhạc.
Can you give
hàng
me
nghìn
another
cái
example? What can you learn?
ví dụ
Something different.
học tiếng Việt được cái gì?
And wrote the object.
Rotate.
Rotate. So the rotation. So because of the rotation, you get a complete perspective. That's the learning output. The rotation is the technical manipulation, but the outcome, that's what I want. What do you learn? It's the perspective.
Kết quả việc học, cái rotate đấy là mình học được cái gì thông qua cái việc động chạm rồi
For
xoay
instance,
đi.
we have VR applications to do surgery. Okay, knee surgery, heart surgery. And we have gloves. And these gloves, for instance, you use them to open the chest. You know, you cut, you saw the ribs, and then you open it with these gloves. You really feel the resistance of the human body. Okay? So, but this is important information. You can do this. But what do you learn from this? What you learn from this is in fact the density, okay, and the tension in the body structure, the bones and the muscles and the tissue.
Ví dụ như là khi chúng ta học tiếng Y, chúng ta có thể gọi là sử dụng thực tế ảo để mở lồng ngực của bệnh nhân ra, thì đấy là hành động. Còn cái chúng ta học ở đây là học được là cấu trúc của các cái cơ quan bên trong, rồi cái độ density, tức là độ san sát nhau của các nội tạng. Đấy là cái chúng ta học được. Còn cái hành động mở lồng ngực ra.
3 examples of VR, and each time I asked you what can we learn and why. And each time the why is you only learn when the user is active. You understand that the question about learning and VR is not easy. This is a very complex question. And for instance, here you see this beautiful girl putting on the glasses, she is smiling. So is she learning? She's enjoying. Okay, so there's a difference. But we have to be sure as teachers, when we develop something, that they learn. So learning is not the same as entertainment.
Học là việc giải trí.
Yeah. And it's in fact not about technology. It's a lot about how you define, before the design, how you define your environment.
Không phải là về kỹ thuật, mà đây là về xây dựng cái bài giảng, bài học VR.
So when you look at research about VR, most of the research is positive. You can be sure it's positive. But let's look at the very recent article. And this is an analysis, a meta-analysis of studies about VR.
Bài báo về phân tích về sử dụng VR trong giáo dục.
And what is important here is it's positive, but the educational design is important to have results. So they really question the educational design of most virtual reality environments. They say, yes, it can be positive, if the design is educational sound.
Kết quả của VR nó sẽ là tích cực nếu chúng ta có được một cái kết quả cụ thể, cái outcome cụ thể, điều mà sinh viên học được gì.
So what will we do? In the next half an hour, we will prepare your homework.
Vòng 3 phút tiếp theo chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu chuẩn bị cho bài tập về nhà.
So I will be a little bit more friendly with you. Okay, I will work and I will show you what you will do after the workshop. Okay?
Sẽ giúp các bạn lên những kế hoạch, lên cái bài tập sẽ làm như thế nào sau khi chúng ta hoàn thành workshop này.
So that's good. Now, you know, when you look at the literature, the key questions, you know what you want the students to do, action, but now you have to define in the VR environment the way to invoke these actions. Okay?
Nên chúng ta đã biết là chúng ta cần phải cho học sinh làm việc, hành động, nhưng bây giờ cách để thiết kế hành động đó như thế nào trong cái môi trường dạy học.
So this is our learner brain. Okay. Smiling. Okay. Here you have the VR tool. Okay. You know, learning is action on objects, on subjects. The question is, what's in the VR will support the action?
Và biết học là action, thực hiện những cái VR thì sẽ giúp gì cho cái việc thực hiện action đó. Đấy là câu hỏi chúng ta sẽ trả lời.
When you look at literature, okay, then you will see that we will only have a good approach when you follow a design cycle.
Chúng ta sẽ có được cái cách tiếp cận tốt, chúng ta follow một cái mô hình theo một cái mô hình sau.
We use in our environment this cycle, and secondly, we don't do it alone, we do it together with the audience or the problem owners.
Không làm việc một mình, chúng ta sẽ làm với những cái target audience, là cái sinh viên, học sinh, những người có vấn đề, problem owners.
Yeah. For instance, we can do it together with students, we can do it together with teachers, but we can do it together with people in the factory, in a garage, in a tourist company, in a hotel.
Sử dụng trong rất nhiều những cái văn cảnh, những cái công ty về nhà máy, những công ty du lịch vân vân trong việc đào tạo.
So we will invite you to follow a design guideline,
Ta sẽ
steps,
mô hình này theo từng bước một.
and we will ask you to work together, okay, as a problem.
Chúng ta sẽ làm việc cùng nhau theo cái bước này, theo từng nhóm.
The design approach is this model, and we focus on the non-technical parts. We focus on analysis, exploration, and design.
Chúng ta tập trung vào những cái đặc tính không liên quan tới công nghệ làm trên của.
This is enough for your homework. You will end up with a kind of mock-up or a prototype, and then the real thing, the construction, evaluation, reflection comes later. That's more technical. But we focus in educational design first a lot on non-technical features.
Tập trung vào phân tích, khám phá và lên thiết kế. Ta sẽ không xây dựng nhưng chưa bắt đầu.
But first is co-creation. For instance, here, these are teachers in the Hanoi University of Agriculture and Forestry in Quốc. Okay. And these here are teachers in Esport in Ecuador. They're all involved in co-creation. Why is it so important to sit together? Well, I told you, I will give you the answers. You will be better. It will be easier to define the needs. It will be easier to define the learning objectives. It's easier to know what are people able to do, what access they have, what expectations they have, and whether they accept a solution.
ví dụ tầm quan trọng của việc làm việc nhóm là việc cùng nhau tránh gặp phải những cái bất đồng, cái không rõ ràng về các mức độ khác nhau.
Imagine that I develop VR for you. You will not like it because it's not yours. It will maybe too difficult. You will not have no access to the technology. The objectives will not be okay. Your needs will not be okay. The objectives might be too difficult. So that's why we really ask you to make it. It's very tricky to ask a company to make your VR solution. Mostly it will not work. You have to be the boss. Teachers know what is best.
Ta phải thực sự làm, nhưng không thể nhờ ai làm. Nếu ít nhờ chúng ta sẽ gặp phải vấn đề về objective, về cái access, cái công nghệ vân vân.
What will I illustrate? I will illustrate two things you have to do as homework.
Hai điều chúng ta phải làm trong bài tập về nhà. Thứ nhất đó là
remember step one, analysis. And this is especially what do you want them to learn from the virtual reality? Okay, remember what do you want them to learn?
mình muốn học sinh sinh học được điều gì trong các khóa thông qua cái
And the next thing is exploration. I'll explain later.
thứ hai đó là
Analysis.
khám phá, exploration.
Let's do it. Sorry. Analysis and exploration is easy. For instance, if you want to make something for your students, you will have to see where will they use it, in what setting, what is their age experience, whether they can read or not, whether they have access to technology, access to internet, how much time, okay, where they will use it. I don't know. You decide. You make a choice. For instance, you want to make something about programming. You might make something for tourism. You might make something about language and communication skills. But you will have to think about who will use it, in what setting, what technology, and so on.
Exploration để trả lời câu hỏi là ai cũng người dùng nó, họ có tính cách như thế nào, có công nghệ gì, họ có tiếp cận như thế nào, không vấn đề thời gian, địa điểm, vân vân. Exploration.
In a way, that's not difficult, but it's very important.
Không khó, rất quan trọng.
So you have to know who will use it, where, how much time, whether they can read, whether they can select, whether they can write. That's your job. Okay. So you have to write down this in a report. Secondly, we go to analysis. So you choose your application field, for instance, tourism, hotel management, the desk in a hotel, you check in, the reception in a hotel, you check in. What do people do? Okay, you can make a virtual reality about this. Or you can have an interaction in a taxi conversation, okay, with a foreigner, with a tourist. So you choose as an application field for your VR solution.
Cái lợi đầu tiên là lựa chọn lĩnh vực để chúng ta sẽ ứng dụng cái công nghệ vào trong giảng dạy.
Of course, I repeat,
Đây là bước analysis, bước ứng dụng.
it has to be linked to your exploration. Next, you choose what do you want them to do, to learn from this VR. Remember, learn is a verb and a subject or an object. For instance, you can make a VR application to repair a printer, repair a pump, or repair an engine of a motorbike, or install a pump, or choose a fertilizer for plants or trees, or check the prices about agriculture wholesale markets, or negotiate with a sales company. You see, a verb and an object. And that's your general objective for your application.
Câu hỏi thứ hai là xác định cái mục tiêu học tập. Chúng ta phải xác định hai vấn đề, đó là hành động là gì và mục tiêu là gì. Định rõ đó là sao.
But you know, to repair a printer, you will have to do other learning objectives. And maybe consult the manual. Okay? look for the parts, order the parts. Okay, so this general objective is in fact very general. Okay, so each of these actions might also require conditional or other actions.
Một cái hành động này là hành động chung và bên dưới hành động này sẽ có hành động cụ thể hơn, chứ nó không phải đi sâu vào chi tiết đó.
For instance, here you see a person with glasses. He has two handhelds, and with the handhelds, they can choose a tool. Okay, where in this case, they are replacing a saw blade on a micro saw. So it's a woodwork shop, and a micro saw is to shorten wooden planks, for instance.
Ví dụ thì họ thay cái lưỡi cưa,
So, to have the general objective, replacing a saw blade on a micro saw, remember,
là mục tiêu chung.
action
Là thay.
and objects.
Tiêu đó là cái lưỡi
Okay.
cưa để thay.
But to do this, you see, you have different smaller
Để
activities.
làm được mục tiêu chung này, chúng ta phải chia nhỏ mục tiêu nhỏ hơn.
Choose a tool. Choose the correct saw blade. Put on protective wear. Okay? So there's a whole series of smaller learning objectives that together define the general learning objective. And of course, you can also think about your setting and so on. For instance, here, this is about building your own car. In Germany, you can buy a package, a huge box, and all the parts of the car are in the box. And then you have a virtual reality environment where they, step by step, you have the different learning steps to do this, to do this, to do this, to do this. And all the time it's tools, objects, you see, gloves, selecting, organizing, structuring, and so on.
Ví dụ về việc lắp một cái xe đua, sử dụng công nghệ ảo.
So the only thing you don't do in the virtual reality is to drive the car. That's what you do on the road. Okay? So you build that car completely with the virtual reality tool. So you have a main objective, and you will have to define sub-objectives. Okay, the sub-objectives are very important because they are conditional to attain the main objective.
Ta sẽ phải đưa ra những cái mục tiêu cụ thể.
For instance, I work with farmers, and they have to apply plant fertilizers. Well, they have to determine the soil type. When it's clay or sand or limestone, you need different fertilizers because you have another proportion of kalium, okay, of nitrate, you have nitrates, you have different levels. You also have to check what plants, fruit trees, will you plant. You will have to choose then, building on this, the right fertilizer. Then you will have to check the dose. Then you will check the fertilizer application approach. So you see, it's action and another object are all the time. So it's a kind of decision tree. So in a way, you see a little movie, a little story, a little scenario behind it. Okay?
Chúng ta hình dung được cả quá trình như thế nào, từng cái bước làm sao để chúng ta có thể xây dựng được những cái mục tiêu cụ thể.
So why do we focus on the verb action and an object? Why? Because the VR has to support this.
Chúng ta làm sao, tại sao chúng ta cần phải xác định rõ cái hành động mục tiêu thì cái công nghệ giúp chúng ta đạt được cái mục tiêu.
Also, afterwards, to check the success of your VR, you will use this list as a checklist. Are students, learners, farmers, professionals able to do this? That's good for your evaluation.
ta sẽ lên cái list, coi như checklist liệu xem học sinh chúng ta có làm những cái việc đó không, làm những mục tiêu cụ thể không.
And now we move from my learning objectives to the VR application. You know, I have my actions, objects, I have my VR. In the VR, what do I ask my things to do with what? So that in the brain of your learner, there is an action with an object.
Công nghệ sẽ giúp ta thiết kế mình phải làm gì với những công cụ nào để đạt được những cái hành động và cái mục tiêu mà chúng ta xác định là sinh viên học sinh phải học.
So I hope you understand there has to be a fit between what you do here and the action there in the brain. It has to fit between what you're doing in relation to the object and the subject.
Nó sẽ kết nối được hành động đó với cái sự hiểu của sinh viên.
Okay, so you can imagine choosing the first electrolyzer, that on the screen you have 5 types of fertilizer with the composition on it.
Ví dụ là trên hình ảnh để chọn phân bón, có 5 loại phân bón thì sinh viên là người sử dụng sẽ được chọn loại nào.
Here you can point and select one of the fertilizers so that you select the correct fertilizer.
Hành động là lựa chọn loại phân bón và kết quả là chọn được loại phân bón đúng, đấy là objective.
So the key question is, in your VR application, what are you expected that the users do? So what do you want them to do there? Not simply listening and watching.
Xác định cái hành động mà học viên sử dụng cái VR đấy làm gì để đạt được mục đích.
This question introduces a new concept. The technology of VR has certain affordances. And that's a very important word for teachers. Okay? A bottle has affordances. A pen has affordances. It has ways to manipulate it so that you can write. It has ways to open it and to contain water so that you can drink. Computers or tablets, they have characteristics so that you can write, select. Okay, so to have a good VR application, you have to know the affordances that fit your actions.
Để thiết kế một cái chương trình VR cho hiểu cái công nghệ đó có những affordances hay gọi là đặc tính gì giúp cho chúng ta tạo ra những action.
So it's good for teachers that you know what can you do in a VR. It's simply watching, no, it's selecting, it's structuring, it's organizing, it's putting together, it's reorganizing, it's repeating, it's watching again. So you need to know what are the actions possible here to see what you can learn from it in your learning objectives.
Hình dung chúng ta sẽ có hai cái mảng riêng, đó là VR và learning. Về VR giúp chúng ta hành động gì để nó tạo được cái learning ở trên action.
This concept does not come from technology. It comes from biology. It comes from biology where we see what does the environment offer an animal to survive.
Hiện là xuất phát từ sinh vật và sinh lý học, sinh thái học.
We all know even you put a rabbit in the desert, it will die.
Cái môi trường xung quanh cung cấp được gì cho loài động vật để sinh sống để được khái niệm.
Because the desert gives certain opportunities, actions, objects, so that the rabbit can survive, can eat, can drink, and can procreate. So the key question is, what actions or part of actions are addressed or invoked by your VR? And I will show you in a demonstration how important this link is. Okay. Most people think about VR, they think about this. They think VR is important because it gives an authentic setting, it's a vivid, alive experience, it's 3D, it's complex, it's user-friendly, if it's a lot of sensorial representations.
một số những đặc tính của VR
Okay.
có thể biết được trước.
Okay, that's characteristics of VR. And they are important. They are important. But today we are talking about this. What does VR allow you to do?
Và tập trung vào VR giúp chúng ta làm những hành động gì?
You can get an authentic experience. Remember traveling in Vietnam with the glasses, but you don't learn. Why? You don't do something. So this is important, but that's not learning. So what we will talk about today is this. What are the actions that you require? So we'll look at what we call the actionable affordances.
Nó tập trung vào các hành động mà VR có thể cung cấp cho chúng ta.
You will not have to write these down, you will make them. Okay? And I will show you in an example. Okay. So again, you will define a general setting, your general verb action, and you will define your objectives and sub-objectives. But then you will be responsible for selecting the right affordances in your VR to support the actions.
Nhiệm vụ chúng ta đặt ra những cái mục tiêu chung, mục tiêu cụ thể.
For instance, what are typical things? You make a choice. You develop a list in the VR application. You select something. You consult something. You design a report. You consult a guideline. You take a picture. You develop an order in actions. So in the VR, you can do things. This is what you can do, and this should guarantee that you can learn. Okay?
Trong những hành động mà chúng ta thực hiện trong VR như là đặt ra lựa chọn, sử dụng.
Okay. Again, this is important for evaluation, but we don't talk about the evaluation yet in the homework. And now the example.
Đây là ví dụ.
Okay. This is a very nice building in Guangzhou, okay, in China. I'm always in this hotel here. In this hotel, that's the Pearl, the White Pearl Hotel. And then I take this picture and send to my wife, I'm in beautiful China. And then I send this picture. I use this picture for the training of safety inspection. Safety inspection is very important in Western Europe and United States. It's becoming important in Asia. Now, if you look at the top of this building, this is really completely unsafe. Would you allow your child to walk there, to play there? Or your grandmother? Maybe once. Yes. So I use this picture to develop a safety training for beginning inspectors. So you can imagine you put on your glasses, and what do you see? You see this picture. But do you learn? Do you learn about safety here? No. Why not? Where are the actions? There are no actions. So, you know, in VR, okay, I can look, I can maybe zoom in and zoom out. Yeah, but it's not learning. That's again simply selecting information or offering information. So what I will do is I will invoke actions. I will invoke actions that people learn about safety rules, safety tools, okay, safety reporting skills, and safety communication skills. So it's four sets of learning objectives. Okay. So here I give access to the general safety regulations manual. So it's not only about this building, you also have to select in the manual the correct section about the rooftop of an apartment block.
Mở ra tôi sẽ tìm thấy cái vị trí của cái quy định về
The other one is an authorities list. Who is responsible for accrediting, okay, and stamping the paper that your building is
Các
safe?
cơ quan hành chính có trách nhiệm trong việc đảm bảo an toàn.
So remember, one of the learning objectives is about administration and safety. Administration and safety is related to rule and rules. Yeah.
Đảm bảo an toàn cho các
And then here is
và các quy định hành chính.
to carry out actions that lead to learning. You can have to give tools. For instance, you have to measure things. You use objects to measure. Okay. You have to set up interviews. Okay. So this gives all these are affordances in the environment. Give access to the affordances that will allow you to do things. Okay. Here is other actions is simply marking risks. Okay? And then, for instance, you can click here, and then you get a special sprayer, and then you can spray, spray, and then you can spray here, okay? And you can spray there. Okay. And in my environment, there is a spray checking list. Okay, I have a good solution. What has to be sprayed? There's also an action list. And there's a reporting list. So you see, it's not simply watching and sitting down. No, all the time you will have to do something. The key result of all this has to be submitted as a report. So all the time of the information that you collect, of the interviews that you carry out, of the objects you use, the tools you use, the marking of the risk, all this results into put it in your reports. Okay, do you see? It's a complete movie you're making.
Ta thấy các cái bước mà nó liên kết lại với nhau thì chúng ta có được cái outcome cuối cùng, đó là đưa ra một cái báo cáo về mức độ an toàn của tòa nhà này, sử dụng tất cả những cái công cụ trên, công cụ cam, công cụ thông tin, công cụ bảng, công cụ
This is my example. This is not yours. You can do something completely
đây là một
different.
ví dụ của thầy. Chúng ta sẽ làm một cái tương tự như này.
Okay. Why these action buttons? Well, you know, the action buttons allow me to do something that fits my learning objectives. Okay? So I need the action buttons. For instance, I can click on the button interview, and then I get access to interview with tenants, and you see they are protesting against the owner of the building who got a letter from authorities about the condition of the building. So again, I click on something and then I get new affordances that allow me to do new actions and activities. For instance,
Sau mỗi cái nút bấm chúng ta sẽ có những cái hành động, những cái lựa chọn tiếp theo để chúng ta tiếp tục.
okay. For instance, if I want to set up interviews with the tenants, I can listen to them. Okay, I can listen. I can re-listen to the interviews, but I can also read the transcripts of the interview. I can select words of sentences for my reports. And I can click on a button, what is the typical structure of a safety report based on the complaints of the tenants. So all of a sudden you see how the VR helps you to do something, to learn something.
Ví dụ về phỏng vấn những cái người dân sống trong tòa nhà này, chúng ta có rất nhiều công cụ khác nhau để có thể kết hợp lại để đưa ra được cái điều chúng ta học được từ cái thông tin đó.
For instance, here, okay, I have these other buttons, for instance, the tools. But when I click the tools, but why is the button there? Why is the button there? Because this button allows me to do again specific activities with objects so that they can learn something. For instance, I can use a measurement tool. And one of the measurement tools is a
drone.
Thank you, a drone. Or I can even use intervention tools, where I can build up scaffolds and no entry instruments and to block entries or exits. Okay? I can have administrative tools to fill out a checklist. Okay? So, and all this again can then be used for my reporting. Okay? So you see how I start with, I choose a setting. I will develop the safety compliance competence of people for apartment blocks. I have a list of sub-competences. I design an environment based on one picture. I can zoom in on the picture, and then I get buttons to do things. And the do buttons are linked to my specific learning objectives.
Mỗi cái nút hành động trên VR, cái chương trình thực tế ảo giúp chúng ta giải quyết được một cái hành động, cũng giải quyết được một cái objective, cái mục tiêu của chúng ta khi học tập chúng ta sẽ chúng ta là xây dựng nó và
For instance, I can select my drone. Okay, with the drone, I can select graphical objects. I can copy them, and I can enter these elements as critical measurement data, and I get information about what are critical measurement data I have to enter in my report. So, of course, I know a lot about safety. You are teachers about programming, teachers about communication, language, okay, devices, operating systems. You know your stuff. So you know the learning objectives behind this. You have to define them, and then you have to look for what affordances of the VR will you use, in fact, to invoke actions that lead to learn. Remember, what you do here has to result in actions in the brain of a student. It's not by selecting something. No, you have to select something as an entry into a report. You have to copy something to build up a scenario. Okay? So all the time, I have this relationship between my setting actions and the learning outcomes.
Chúng ta mỗi người sẽ có một cái lĩnh vực rất khác nhau, nhưng chúng ta biết được, chúng ta xác định được cái objective, cái mục tiêu, chúng ta sẽ từ đó chúng ta nhiều lên, chúng ta lựa chọn những cái action nào chúng ta sử dụng, rồi chúng ta đi ngược tiếp đến những cái affordances của VR, chúng ta phải làm gì trên cái thực tế ảo đó để tạo ra một cái outcome cụ thể, để nó tùy vào từng cái lĩnh vực của người cô.
You have seen that for every button in my main screen, I have a sub-screen and another sub-screen. In that way, I can develop what we call a mock-up. A kind of, it's not a real prototype, but it's a mock-up prototype. And please remember what we call the navigation buttons. Otherwise, you will be lost, because you will develop maybe 10, 15 screens.
Chúng ta thiết kế cho lưu ý cái nút navigation để chúng ta có thể follow được là mình đang làm đến đâu, tránh cái việc chúng ta làm trong cái mê cung của các cái objective, các cái mục tiêu.
Before I finish, of course your learner, your student, your professional will do a lot, but all the time in their head they will ask, is this correct? Is this correct? Am I right? Is this okay? It's like your student in the classroom, am I doing okay, sir, or madam? That's what they ask. They submit their report, and they look at you with these eyes, please, is it okay? They want feedback. So the big question is, how will you give feedback in the VR application? It's not that difficult to give feedback. But you have to be sure that you know there are three types of feedback. There are feedback at the ends. Okay? But there is feedback that is during the process. All the time you can say what is possible. You can give a hint. You can show a relevant area, a zone. And for instance, you can move your cursor on the screen and the cursor starts clicking or changes in shape. That's why I add this. Okay? And feed forward, what can you do next? Okay, so think about that too. It's already more advanced. If you're not able to do it, that's not a problem. Okay? But the key question is, how will it look?
At the end, tức là cuối xong chúng ta đưa nhận xét bài làm của học sinh sinh viên. Pick up tức là trong quá trình làm chúng ta đưa ra nhận xét luôn ta nên làm gì, đưa ra những gợi ý để học sinh có thể làm. Feed forward tức là trước khi học sinh làm thì chúng ta đưa ra những cái hướng dẫn là học sinh là làm mình làm gì tiếp theo, làm như thế nào, ba loại xác định sẽ như thế nào nhá. Ba loại feedback, feed up, feed forward.
For instance, here you select the measurement tool, you select the drone, and at the same time you get 3 new buttons, and these are feet up buttons, where you see what did other people do in this environment. Yeah, you know, students and learners, they like this. What can you do here? What did others do? Oh yes, good idea.
Đây là ví dụ feed up,
Okay.
có những cái nội dung mà giúp học sinh sinh viên có thể biết là mình sẽ phải làm gì tiếp theo trong quá trình học sinh đang
Or what is possible on this complete screen. Okay? Or what are critical measures, because you have to discuss critical measures, but you get some more information about the critical measures so that you have a better understanding right just in time at that spot about the information that is needed. So you see, in a way, embedding feedback is not that difficult, but you have to give the opportunity to people to consult feedback. Otherwise, they will come to you afterwards, did I do a good job? It's a virtual learning environment. You have 50 students and then they come to you, did they do a good job? I didn't know what you do. So,
thiết kế những cái feedback nằm ngay trong cái VR giúp học sinh có thể thực hiện nó một cách
so the result of your work today, this afternoon, and then by Monday is that you develop a series of screenshots that support a kind of activity part, a kind of scenario, a timeline, depending on what you choose. A communication scenario, or a disaster management disaster, or a debugging exercise, or a conversation with a customer. Okay? So it's a series of screenshots, of designs, of makeup, with whatever tool you want. You can do it with PowerPoint. I'm doing it with PowerPoint here. You can use other tools. But it has to be a kind of graphical representation in which you can go forward and backwards.
bài tập của chúng ta là xây dựng cái bức ảnh, sử dụng những cái xu, cái giống như lúc nãy thầy vừa làm với cái tòa nhà chung cư của Trung Quốc này.
And we want to know what are the learning objects. So what's your main learning object, and what are the sub-learning objects? That by every action in the VR is being supported. Okay, so please check also whether the buttons and the actions are really helping to attain the different learning objectives. So please check, we call that a validity check. And maybe there might be missing elements. That's not a problem. The key problem is if you don't know there is something missing. Okay, so you put together your car, and then there are 5 pieces left over, and your car is driving. Is this safe? Okay. So please define the 5 elements that are left over, and maybe you call, okay, customer service to see is this boat sensation. Maybe I forgot one of the brakes. Okay, that's your homework.
Đây là bài tập ở nhà.
So in a way, it's creative. You can work with screenshots. You can make pictures. Okay? You can work in a garden. You can work in a garage. You can work in a company. You can work here at university. It's all the same, but we want this as a list. So, learning objectives. Please, learning objectives is always action on an object and a subject. Something that you can observe.
Xác định mục tiêu bao gồm hành động và
define the exploration activity, the setting, the expectations, the access, the technology, the language capacities. Develop a starting point. Remember, my starting point was the picture of the ugly building in June. Okay? You can choose another starting point. And then you develop a series of VR entries. Yeah, these are these buttons that give you access to a new set of actions. And new actions that allow you to work in relation to these objectives. Don't forget feedback features. You don't have to develop them, but at least provide them. Check whether the actions fit the learning objectives, and prepare a presentation for Monday.
Đây là các bước các thầy cô làm cho cái bài tập về nhà thứ hai. Đầu tiên là bước analysis, phân tích để chúng ta xác định cái mục tiêu học tập và những cái hành động chúng ta cần phải làm.
And in that way, we worked on analysis, design, and exploration.
Thứ hai là xác định cái setting chúng ta sẽ làm về lĩnh vực gì.
Please work together, it's much more fun. Yes. Some are good at making pictures, some are good at building
Đây là bài nhóm,
scenarios.
bài cá nhân, chúng ta làm với nhóm.
And now the most annoying question the teacher can ask. Do you have questions?
Chị em ai có hỏi có thể câu hỏi.
And people will
Sẽ
say,
hỏi về em có thể tóm tắt lại
and yes, and the answers. And the moment I say it's over, then you come to me and you will ask questions.
Yeah. That's very natural.
Okay, we know this was a very fast workshop.
Yes.
Okay. Normally, we could do this during one full day, but you're not used to it. Most of you will drop dead if we do it okay. No, it's tiring.
Khối lượng đầu tiên là khá nhiều thì bình thường chúng ta làm trong một ngày, bây giờ chúng ta tóm gọn trong nửa ngày.
But on Monday, we will look at your work. So please, 1, 2, 3, 4 examples. You can decide who will present.
4 bài present, 4 bài present giống như cái bài của thầy lúc nãy.
And then you will get your certificate.
Và sau đó sẽ có chứng chỉ đã hoàn thành workshop.
And there is still charge.
Thầy vẫn còn số lại.
Thank you.
Có ai câu hỏi gì cho thầy không?
Rồi mà đi làm này cũng muốn hỏi.
Ai chưa rõ thì cái quy trình chúng ta cần làm cái gì ở trên trong cái công thức.
Professor.
Yes, but
Based on what stereotype whether I should use AR or VR to sort of prompt to you.
He asked the decision about AR or VR. You have seen I used AR. Okay, I augmented a reality. This is where it is sufficiently safe. When it's sufficiently safe, information rich, okay, accessible, then you can use it. And also, that is recognizable for people. In a way, you could add your own picture of a Hanoi building in this application. That's possible. So it's replaced the VR solution. For instance, in the cycling, it's better to have the VR because then I can be complete in the complex situations that you meet. Okay. Also, when it's not accepted to show faces of people. Then, for instance, when I do communication activities, then I will not use augmented reality, but rather VR, where I have people and I can talk to them, but without violating privacy issues. So there are many other reasons. Okay, but that's the most. Augmented reality is I can have a general application For instance, we developed a tool to do resuscitation. You know, when you have a heart attack, you drop down, and it can be in the streets, it can be in a company, it can be in a park, it can be in a playground. The activity stays the same. So we as trainers, depending on where the training was given, we change the background. So the background is an augmented reality because the person falling was always the same person. It was in a playground, or it was in the streets, or it was in a company. Okay? So that people are better, they recognize the situation and say, oh yes, this is our company, or this is our setting, our school setting. Whereas the VR is, well, if really it has to be complete, then we cannot show one reality. We'll have to pick from different reality all the elements.
So I think I should summarize this as AR is all about environment change, and the VR is all about action.
Yes, but it's more about being complete about the actions, where also it's acceptable to show everything. Also, in an augmented reality, you will not show a volcano eruption. Or you will not show a real-life accident, so then you will rather use a simulation, also out of respect for structural features.
Câu hỏi chúng ta là nên dùng VR hay AR thì VR sẽ phụ thuộc vào việc là chúng ta muốn tất cả mọi thứ, mọi element nó phải có nằm trong một cái thực tế ảo đó. Chúng ta dùng VR, còn AR nó chỉ có một cái underlying là một cái chính, và chúng ta có thể sắp xếp nó theo những cái môi trường khác nhau. Thế là khi lựa chọn VR AR, còn VR AR tùy vào từng cái đặc tính của nó chúng ta lựa chọn.
So again, you choose your own setting. You can choose VR, you can choose a drawing. For instance, VR, then you would start with a drawing. Or extended reality, you can even start from a real life picture and put on top of the picture, you can put an animated figure. That's also possible. Then it's mixed reality. But we will not have a conceptual discussion about it. So for me, it's all the same because it's all about learning. What matters for me is what do people do, so what do they learn? Okay, it's clear. You choose with your team setting, learning objectives, sub-objectives, explore what your users are able to do, the capacities. Okay. Then you develop a series of actions building on your affordances. Okay. Then you look at feedback features and how can you present it to us? And then you get your certificate.
Mục tiêu của chúng ta không phải là sử dụng VLIR, mục tiêu chúng ta là hiểu cái cách chúng ta, các process, các cái bước chúng ta làm. Nên là VLIR cũng quan trọng, chúng ta quan trọng là chúng ta objective như nào, action làm sao và đưa ra những cái outcome như nào. Đấy là cái mục tiêu cuối cùng. Workshop này chúng ta nên dùng VLIR.
Work together.
Và làm cùng nhau, làm theo nhóm mà chúng ta có 4 nhóm, mà phần thứ 2 chúng ta sẽ có 4 bài để xem trả bài ở đây. Thầy cô nào có câu hỏi gì có thể? Any questions? Chỉ cần đấy là cái phần feedback thì mình chỉ cần đưa ra những option cho chọn, nó không nhất thiết phải đưa feedback. Trong trường hợp này cần thêm feedback, cần thêm thông tin gì, tức là ý của phần feedback tức là gì? Mình hiểu được là tới cái thời điểm đó học sinh có những câu hỏi, những cái khúc mắc gì thì nó có sẵn những câu trả lời để học sinh thì không luôn, chứ không nhất thiết phải develop hiện tại cái homework cần phải phát triển đến mức là trả lời như thế nào, mà chỉ cần là mình hiểu được là sinh viên đến mức đấy họ tính đến cái bước đó họ khúc mắc thì mình sẽ cho câu trả lời bên cạnh, chính là những cái đấy.
So you don't simply provide buttons and IDs, that's enough. You don't have to open the screen and tell people there. Simply the general ideas.